Some of you are worried not because you don't believe in God, but because you can't see what He's doing. And when you can't see God moving, your mind starts moving in the wrong direction. You start imagining worst case scenarios. You start replaying problems. You start predicting failure before the fight even begins. But here is the truth. You must anchor your soul to today. God does His best work behind the scenes. Just because heaven is quiet doesn't mean heaven is inactive. We panic when we don't see progress. God works even when there's no visible proof. We measure by sight. God moves by purpose. While you are stressing over the delay, God is arranging details. While you're losing sleep, God is lining up people. While you think nothing is changing, God is changing you. Sometimes the reason nothing is happening around you is because something is happening inside you. Worry says, what if it falls apart? Faith says, what if God is putting it together? You're looking at the problem as an obstacle. God sees it as construction. You see interruption. God sees preparation. You see a closed door. God sees protection. If God gave you everything the moment you asked, you wouldn't be ready to carry it. Delay is not denial. Delay is development. Think about it. A seed is buried in dirt before it breaks into life. From the outside, it looks like nothing. But underground, roots are forming. Strength is forming. Stability is forming. Just because you're in a buried season doesn't mean you're forgotten. It means you're being planted. Worry tries to take control of a situation that belongs to God. And every time you try to carry what only God can handle, you exhaust yourself emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. You were not built to manage the universe. You were built to trust the one who does. God is working in ways you can't trace, on timelines you don't understand, for outcomes bigger than you can imagine. The pressure you feel is not proof God left. It's proof something important is in process. Some blessings come wrapped in struggle. Some breakthroughs come disguised as breakdowns. Some miracles begin in moments that look like loss. What if the very thing you're worried about is the very thing God is using to position you? Peace comes when you stop asking, why is this happening? And start declaring, God is working even here. You may not see the full picture, but God never loses sight of it. Your job is not to figure everything out. Your job is to stay faithful while He works it out. And one day, you'll look back at this season, the tears, the confusion, the waiting, and realize God was doing more than you ever knew. So breathe, release the fear, loosen your grip, because heaven is not nervous about your situation. God says most of the anxiety people carry does not come from what they see happening. It comes from what they don't see happening. When progress is invisible, fear becomes loud. When results are delayed, doubt starts writing stories in your mind. You begin to assume that silence means absence, that stillness means neglect, that delay means God has stepped away from your situation. But heaven does not operate on your visibility. It operates on divine activity that is often hidden from human eyes. God's greatest movements are often unannounced and unseen. Before a tree breaks through the soil, an entire root system has already been forming in darkness. Before a building rises into the skyline, a foundation has been laid underground where nobody applauds and nobody takes pictures. What looks like nothing is often the most important stage of all. If you judge your life only by what you can observe, you will misinterpret seasons where God is doing deep structural work beneath the surface. We are conditioned to believe that if something is real, it must be visible. But spiritual reality does not follow that rule. Air is invisible, yet you live by it. Gravity is unseen, yet it holds you in place. In the same way, God's activity is not limited to what your eyes can verify. Just because you cannot trace His hand does not mean His hand is not moving. In fact, the hidden seasons are often when God is arranging circumstances, aligning people, blocking dangers you never knew existed, and preparing outcomes you could not have planned. One of the reasons we struggle with this truth is because we equate movement with noise. We think if God were working, we would see doors flying open, immediate answers, dramatic turnarounds. But often, divine work is quiet. It happens in conversations you haven't had yet. Opportunities forming behind closed doors, lessons developing in your character, and timing that is being synchronized beyond your awareness. The silence you interpret as inactivity may actually be precision. God is not slow, He is strategic. There are moments when your life feels paused, like you are stuck in the same place with the same problem and the same prayer. But a pause in your view does not mean a pause in God's plan. Sometimes God holds you in place not because nothing is happening, but because too much is happening that must come together at the right moment. If even one detail moved too soon, the outcome would not hold. What feels like stagnation may actually be divine coordination. Consider how often you have been protected without knowing it. Delays that frustrated you may have kept you from situations that would have harmed you. Closed doors that disappointed you may have redirected you from paths that were not meant for you. You only see the no, but you don't see what that no prevented. God's unseen work includes both provision and protection, and both are acts of love. There is also inner work taking place that you cannot measure by external change. While you are waiting for circumstances to shift, God may be strengthening your patience, deepening your faith, refining your motives, and teaching you dependence. If the external answer came before the internal growth, you might gain the blessing, but lose the stability to sustain it. So God works in you while He works for you. Both processes often happen quietly. Trust grows in the space where sight ends. Anyone can believe when evidence is obvious, but faith is developed when you choose to trust without visible proof. That unseen season becomes the training ground where your confidence in God matures beyond feelings and into conviction. You begin to learn that His reliability is not based on what you see today, but on who He has always been. When you accept that God is working even when you don't see it, your perspective shifts. Waiting becomes less about frustration and more about expectation. Silence becomes less threatening and more sacred. You stop demanding constant signs and start resting in steady trust. Instead of asking, why is nothing happening? You begin to declare, something is happening, even if I can't see it yet. Waiting seasons have a way of making people feel overlooked, as if life is moving forward for everyone else while they are standing still. You pray, you plan, you hope, yet the door does not open when you expect it to. In those moments, it is easy to label the delay as rejection, to assume the answer is no simply because the answer is not now. But delay and denial are not the same thing. One closes the future, the other prepares you for it. Growth rarely happens in moments of arrival. It happens in moments of process. When something you desire is postponed, it creates space for development that would not occur if everything came quickly. Character is built in waiting. Patience is strengthened in waiting. Trust is purified in waiting. If every prayer were answered instantly, you might gain what you asked for without becoming the person who can carry it responsibly. Timing is one of God's tools for shaping not just your circumstances, but your capacity. Think about how preparation works in every other area of life. An athlete does not walk into a championship without training. A builder does not raise walls without laying a foundation. A student does not receive a degree without years of learning. The preparation stage often feels repetitive, slow, and unseen, but it is what makes the visible success possible. In the same way, delayed answers in your life are not empty time, they are training time. Strength is being built in places applause never reaches. Often what you are asking for requires a version of you that does not yet exist. Greater responsibility demands greater wisdom. Bigger influence demands deeper humility. Larger blessings demand stronger discipline. If the opportunity arrived before the grow, WTH, the very thing meant to bless you could overwhelm you. So delay becomes protection, not punishment. It shields you from stepping into something you are not yet ready to sustain. Waiting also reveals what truly controls your heart. When something takes longer than expected, your reactions expose whether your trust is rooted in outcomes or in God Himself. If peace disappears the moment a timeline changes, it shows how tightly you were holding to your own expectations. Delay loosens that grip. It teaches you to surrender not only the request, but also the schedule. You begin to understand that faith is not just believing God can do it, but trusting Him to choose when. There is also alignment happening beyond your awareness. Your blessing may involve other people, other events, other decisions that must come together at the right time. If your answer arrived too early, the connections would be incomplete. What feels like a personal delay may actually be a larger coordination. Pieces are moving that you cannot see. Conversations are taking place you are not part of. Doors are being positioned to open at the moment they will matter most. Timing is not random, it is arranged. Emotionally, waiting stretches you. Spiritually, it deepens you. Mentally, it matures you. You learn endurance, the ability to stay steady without constant reassurance. You learn perspective, recognizing that a season does not define your whole story. You learn gratitude, appreciating small signs of progress instead of demanding instant transformation. These qualities do not form in comfort, they form in process. Delay also teaches you to separate urgency from importance. Many things feel urgent because of pressure, comparison, or fear of missing out. But what is truly important unfolds according to purpose, not panic. When you rush ahead of your development, you may step into something that looks right but is not built to last. Waiting filters out what is temporary and prepares you for what is lasting. Over time, you begin to see past delays differently. Situations that once frustrated you may later reveal themselves as necessary pauses that kept you from mistakes, wrong partnerships, or unstable foundations. What you thought was being withheld was actually being timed. What you saw as a setback was a setup for something more fitting. When you understand that delay is development, the season changes meaning. Instead of feeling stuck, you recognize you are being shaped. Instead of counting days in frustration, you invest them in growth. You realize the waiting room is not empty. It is a workshop where strength, wisdom, and readiness are being formed for what lies ahead. Worry has a way of slipping into your life quietly, presenting itself as responsibility. It tells you that if you think about the problem long enough, analyze every angle, and rehearse every possible outcome, you will somehow gain control. But what feels like preparation is often just pressure you were never meant to carry. There is a difference between being aware of a situation and trying to be in charge of it. The moment your thoughts move from concern to constant mental strain, you have likely stepped into a role that does not belong to you. Human beings have limits. Your mind, emotions, and body were not designed to handle the weight of the entire future. Yet worry convinces you that everything depends on you. Your timing, your solutions, your ability to prevent every negative outcome. That belief quietly replaces trust with self-reliance. Instead of bringing the issue to God and leaving it there, you keep picking it back up, replaying it, trying to solve what is beyond your reach. The exhaustion you feel is often not from the problem itself, but from trying to carry it alone. There is a reason worry drains you so deeply. You are attempting to manage outcomes without having full knowledge, full power, or full control. Only God sees the complete picture, every detail, every consequence, every connection. When you try to take over His role, you step into a space you were never equipped to occupy. It is like trying to steer a ship without seeing the ocean ahead. The tension in your mind reflects the mismatch between what you are holding and what you were built to hold. Worry also creates the illusion that thinking equals progress. You tell yourself that staying mentally busy with the problem means you are doing something about it. But constant rumination rarely produces clarity. It usually multiplies fear. Your thoughts circle the same questions without landing on real solutions. Meanwhile, peace disappears, focus weakens, and your present moments become overshadowed by imagined futures. You sacrifice today's strength for tomorrow's uncertainties. Trust, on the other hand, is not passive neglect, it is active release. It means you still do what is within your responsibility. You pray, you plan, you act wisely, but you refuse to carry what belongs to God. You recognize the boundary between effort and control. You handle what you can influence and surrender what you cannot. That surrender is not weakness, it is alignment. You are placing the burden back into the hands that are capable of holding it. Often worry grows from the belief that if you let go, everything will fall apart. But the truth is, many things were being held together long before you started stressing about them. Your constant mental involvement is not what sustains the world around you. God's sovereignty does not depend on your anxiety. When you finally release the need to manage every outcome, you make room for peace to return, and peace restores strength that worry had drained. There is also a deeper issue beneath worry, the need for certainty. You want guarantees, clear timelines, visible proof. When those are missing, your mind tries to fill the gaps with worst-case scenarios. But faith grows in uncertainty. It develops when you move forward without having every answer. By trying to eliminate all unknowns, worry keeps you stuck, while trust allows you to walk even when the path is not fully lit. Letting go does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop carrying. You shift from being the source of the solution to being the recipient of God's guidance. You acknowledge that some outcomes are shaped by factors beyond your sight. When you stop gripping so tightly, you begin to experience a different kind of strength, the strength that comes from dependence rather than control. As you practice releasing your worries, you may notice how much lighter your inner world becomes. Thoughts slow down, your body relaxes, your perspective widens. You are still aware of the challenge, but it no longer defines your emotional state. That change is not because the situation instantly improved, but because the weight has moved from your shoulders to God's. And that is exactly where it was meant to be. What you label as a problem often carries a purpose you cannot yet see. Human perspective tends to judge situations by comfort and convenience, but divine perspective looks at outcomes, growth, and long-term impact. Because you cannot see the full picture, you may misread moments that feel negative as meaningless setbacks, when in reality they are strategic steps in a larger design. A closed door can feel like rejection, but it may actually be redirection. A struggle can feel like punishment, but it may be preparation. Difficult seasons disrupt your plans, but they also refine your focus. When everything moves smoothly, it is easy to rely on routine, assumptions, and your own understanding. Challenges interrupt that autopilot mode. They force you to pause, to reassess priorities, to seek guidance, and to develop resilience. The discomfort you want removed may be the very tool shaping wisdom, endurance, and clarity. Without resistance, muscles do not grow stronger. In the same way, without obstacles, character often remains shallow. Sometimes a no protects you from paths that appear promising but carry hidden consequences. You see only the opportunity, God sees the outcome. What looks like a loss today may spare you from deeper loss tomorrow. Protection does not always feel pleasant. Being kept from something you want can feel like deprivation, yet later you may recognize it as preservation. There are situations you would have walked into confidently, unaware of the strain, distraction, or damage they could have caused. A barrier you resented might have been a boundary of grace. Problems also expose areas that need strengthening. Pressure reveals cracks that comfort hides. When circumstances become difficult, weaknesses in patience, trust, discipline, or perspective rise to the surface. This exposure is not to shame you, but to heal and build you. You cannot grow in areas you refuse to see. Challenges shine light on the internal adjustments necessary for the future you are asking for. The obstacle outside may be addressing preparation inside. It is also common for problems to shift your direction towards something better aligned with your purpose. Many meaningful paths begin with detours. A job that ends may open the way to work more suited to your gifts. A relationship that closes may clear space for healthier connections. A plan that falls apart may free you from a future that would have limited you. While you grieve what changed, God may be guiding you toward what fits. Redirection often feels like disruption before it feels like guidance. Timing plays a role as well. Something may be good in itself but wrong for the moment. If you step into it too early, it can bring strain instead of blessing. Delays and complications can slow you down until the timing aligns with readiness. What feels like unnecessary difficulty might be ensuring that when the opportunity comes, you have the maturity, resources, and stability to handle it well. Preparation sometimes arrives disguised as inconvenience. Problems also deepen empathy and understanding. Experiences that stretch you emotionally often equip you to support others later. Pain you endure can become insight you share. Struggles you face can become bridges of connection. Without walking through difficulty, your perspective may remain narrow. What once felt like a burden may later become part of how you serve, guide, or encourage someone else facing similar challenges. When you begin to see problems as potential preparation, your mindset shifts from resistance to reflection. Instead of asking only how to escape the situation, you start asking what can be learned within it. That question opens the door to growth. You become more attentive, more patient, more willing to trust that even uncomfortable moments have value. The focus moves from immediate relief to long-term development. This does not mean every difficulty is easy or enjoyable. Some seasons are genuinely painful and confusing. Yet even then, meaning can exist beneath the surface. Threads you cannot connect now may form a clear pattern later. Looking back often reveals how certain obstacles shaped direction, strengthened character, or guarded your path in ways you did not understand at the time. When you hold the possibility that problems can serve preparation, hope remains alive even in hard moments. You recognize that the story is still unfolding. What appears final may only be a chapter. What feels like an ending may be a transition. Perspective does not erase the challenge, but it changes how you walk through it, allowing trust to grow where frustration once dominated. Faith is tested not when everything goes smoothly, but when uncertainty and delay press against your patience. It is easy to declare trust when the outcome is obvious and the path is clear, but true faith is revealed in the tension between what you desire and what you can see. When you cannot trace God's hand, when circumstances seem tangled or stalled, that is the moment your faith has an opportunity to grow from mere belief into steadfast confidence. Worry and fear may attempt to dominate, but faith calls you to a higher perspective, reminding you that there is a purpose beyond your understanding. Many people fail to recognize that faith is active, not passive. It is not simply waiting without complaint. It is choosing to rely on God while taking the steps He has placed within your ability. Faith involves action that aligns with trust. You still work, plan, and prepare, but you do so with the awareness that the results are not yours to manufacture. Your responsibility is diligence. Your reliance is surrender, and your reward is peace. This balance between effort and dependence distinguishes mere hope from genuine faith. Faith also shifts your focus from problems to possibilities. When you are consumed with worry, the mind narrows and exaggerates obstacles. Every setback looms larger than it is. Faith enlarges your vision, allowing you to see potential outcomes, lessons, and growth opportunities that worry would obscure. You begin to understand that difficulties are of temporary, and that God's purposes are greater than the temporary discomfort you experience. What looks like a delay may be the careful orchestration of an outcome far beyond what you imagined. Another aspect of faith is understanding timing. Many disappointments arise not from denial, but from impatience. You desire an answer immediately, but the season may not be right. Faith teaches endurance. It trains the heart to trust the process, even when the process is uncomfortable. Each day of waiting becomes a lesson in reliance. Each moment of uncertainty an opportunity to develop patience, humility, and trust. The delay is not a sign of absence. It is an invitation to grow in readiness for what is coming. Faith also protects your heart from the erosion caused by constant worry. When your confidence is rooted in God rather than circumstances, you are not as easily shaken by setbacks, delays, or confusion. Your stability comes from the knowledge that God's character does not change, that his promises are reliable, and that his timing is perfect. This internal security allows you to navigate challenges without being consumed by anxiety, maintaining clarity and composure in moments that would otherwise provoke panic. Faith develops through perspective. You begin to see beyond immediate discomfort and understand that your current situation is not the entirety of the story. Every experience, whether easy or difficult, is part of a larger plan. Challenges become lessons rather than punishments. Obstacles transform into preparation. Faith trains you to interpret life through the lens of purpose, not panic, and to recognize that even unseen movements are part of a divine strat, e.g., that is working in your favor. Importantly, faith is contagious. When you maintain confidence in God during uncertainty, you influence those around you. Your composure, trust, and hope provide a model for others struggling with similar doubts. By embodying faith, you become a living testament to the power of reliance on God, showing that peace and perseverance are possible even in the midst of chaos. Your faith not only sustains you, but it strengthens the spiritual atmosphere around you. Finally, faith anchors hope. Without faith, waiting feels meaningless and challenges seem insurmountable. With faith, you maintain the expectation that God is working, even when you cannot see the evidence. Faith refuses to surrender to fear, refuses to speculate on worst-case scenarios, and refuses to believe that delay equals denial. It allows you to rest in confidence, knowing that divine orchestration is at work. While worry distracts, faith clarifies. While fear clouds, faith illuminates. While doubt weakens, faith strengthens. In practice, faith transforms how you live each day. You no longer obsess over outcomes, second-guess decisions, or exhaust yourself with scenarios you cannot control. You take the next step with wisdom, but your heart remains anchored in trust. You pray, you act, you wait, and you believe that the unseen hand of God is actively working for your good. In every moment, faith becomes the stabilizing force that protects, guides, and sustains you, even through uncertainty and delay. Peace does not mean the absence of problems, nor does it come from controlling every outcome. True peace comes from understanding that God is in control, even when circumstances seem chaotic. Many people spend their energy trying to fix situations that are beyond their reach, thinking that control equals security. The result is often exhaustion, frustration, and inner turmoil. What they fail to realize is that real security is found not in managing life, but in trusting the one who manages all things. When you surrender control to God, you are not giving up. You are gaining alignment with a power far greater than your own. And in that alignment, peace emerges. The mind is a battlefield. Worry, fear, and doubt compete for attention, often drowning out the calm voice of assurance. When you allow these thoughts to dominate, you feed anxiety, magnify problems, and create stress that affects your body, emotions, and spirit. Peace is the ability to remain steady in the midst of this internal storm. It is cultivated when you intentionally focus on God's promises rather than your fears. Choosing to meditate on truth rather than speculation trains the mind to resist the cycles of worry and positions you to experience stability even when life is unstable. Understanding divine timing is a cornerstone of peace. Much of human frustration comes from impatience. You want results immediately, clarity now, and answers today. But God operates on a timeline that is perfect, not predictable. Delays are not denials, they are orchestrated opportunities for preparation, protection, and refinement. When you recognize that God's timing is deliberate, your perspective shifts. You stop interpreting waiting as stagnation and start seeing it as a season of growth, alignment, and unseen progress. This mindset is essential for cultivating lasting peace because it anchors your heart in trust rather than in timelines you cannot control. Gratitude plays a critical role in maintaining peace. When you focus on what is present and acknowledge the blessings already received, you redirect attention away from scarcity and toward sufficiency. Worry thrives in an environment of lack. It grows when you are fixated on what is missing or uncertain. By practicing gratitude, you reinforce the truth that God has provided, continues to provide, and is faithful in all seasons. Gratitude does not deny challenges, but it frames them within the context of ongoing provision and care, which calms the heart and renews the spirit. Another element of peace is recognizing boundaries between what you can influence and what you cannot. Much of anxiety arises when people try to control outcomes that are not theirs to manage. Peace is cultivated when you focus energy on your responsibilities and release the rest to God. This does not imply passivity. It requires active discernment and wise action within your sphere of influence. You do what you can do while trusting God to do what only He can do. This balance creates a sense of freedom and removes the weight of impossible burdens from your mind and heart. Faith strengthens peace by reminding you of God's reliability. When life is unpredictable, your anchor becomes the character of God rather than circumstances. Trusting that God is working, even when unseen, stabilizes the soul. It prevents you from being tossed by every new challenge, disappointment, or change. Faith transforms uncertainty from a source of anxiety into an opportunity for growth and reliance on God's unchanging nature. With faith, your heart rests because you understand that God is always at work, orchestrating details that may be invisible but are perfectly timed. Prayer is another pathway to peace. Communicating with God does more than request solutions. It aligns your mind with divine perspective. When you present concerns to God and choose to leave them in His hands, you train your mind to release control. The act of prayer replaces rumination with reflection, worry with worship, and tension with trust. It is a practical expression of surrender that cultivates calm, steadiness, and clarity. Consistent prayer transforms the inner landscape, creating a sanctuary of peace amid external chaos. Finally, peace grows through repeated practice of trust and surrender. It is not an instantaneous gift, but a cultivated habit. Each time you face uncertainty and choose faith over fear, each time you release control and focus on God's promises, peace strengthens within you. Over time, the mind learns to default to calmness rather than panic. The heart learns to anchor in God rather than circumstances, and the spirit becomes resilient in adversity. The presence of God becomes the measure of peace, not the absence of problems, and you learn to walk through life with a steady confidence that transcends situations. Sometimes the very thing that feels like a setback is actually a setup. Life does not always follow the timeline we expect, and what appears as a disruption may be part of a larger design that we cannot yet perceive. People often interpret delays, closed doors, or disappointments as evidence that they are forgotten or abandoned, but divine perspective operates differently from human perception. What seems inconvenient, or frustrating may actually be a carefully arranged preparation for something far greater than you can imagine. The frustration you feel is often a reflection of limited sight, not the absence of progress or purpose. Setbacks teach patience and endurance in ways that smooth paths never can. When everything goes according to plan, the mind is comfortable and faith is untested. But challenges stretch you beyond your comfort zone, forcing a reliance on resources and strength you might not have realized were available. Adversity exposes areas in your character that need development, revealing weaknesses that require attention. Without the friction of difficulty, growth is often shallow, and accomplishments lack the depth that comes from overcoming obstacles. The very discomfort you resist may be the instrument of refinement. Delays also cultivate discernment. When opportunities arrive too quickly or without the necessary preparation, the risk of misstep increases. Timing is essential, and what seems like waiting may actually be God orchestrating circumstances, aligning people, and establishing conditions that ensure the outcome is secure and sustainable. If blessings arrive before readiness, the results could overwhelm, mislead, or even harm you. A closed door is sometimes a protective measure, preventing access to what is premature or potentially detrimental. The invisible coordination taking place often ensures that when the right opportunity comes, it will be both fruitful and enduring. Problems have a way of expanding perspective. They force the mind to consider multiple angles, evaluate priorities, and weigh options more carefully than ease ever could. Difficult seasons encourage creativity, resourcefulness, and reliance on wisdom beyond one's own. They cultivate humility, reminding you that not everything is within your control. The lessons embedded in setbacks are not immediately apparent, but over time, they reveal themselves as essential building blocks for future success, deeper understanding, and stronger character. What is painful in the moment often becomes invaluable in hindsight. Setbacks also strengthen faith by demanding reliance on God rather than self. When life appears to stall, it becomes tempting to take matters into your own hands, to manipulate situations, or to force outcomes prematurely. Faith calls you to trust in timing, provision, and guidance that are beyond human calculation. By resisting the urge to control every detail and instead surrendering to divine oversight, you cultivate an inner calm that is resilient, steady, and focused on long-term purpose rather than immediate gratification. The ability to wait with faith transforms how you navigate every season of uncertainty. Another critical aspect of setbacks is the way they build empathy and understanding. Experiencing struggle personally equips you to support, guide, and encourage others facing similar challenges. The insights gained from hardship allow you to relate authentically, offering wisdom that comes from lived experience rather than theory. This relational growth is often overlooked, but is a direct byproduct of navigating adversity with trust and integrity. The people you influence, the guidance you provide, and the encouragement you offer can be direct outcomes of the lessons learned in difficult seasons. Setbacks also illuminate the difference between temporary obstacles and permanent barriers. Many difficulties are situational, serving as tests, lessons, or preparatory stages rather than final rejections. By recognizing the temporary nature of many challenges, you prevent discouragement from taking root and maintain the motivation to persevere. The ability to differentiate between what is a detour and what is a dead end helps you conserve energy, focus efforts, and maintain hope in the face of uncertainty. Finally, setbacks remind you of the value of perspective and patience. Life rarely unfolds according to human expectations, and control is often an illusion. When you approach each obstacle with the understanding that there may be unseen purpose, you shift from frustration to reflection. You learn to see each delay, challenge, or failure as an integral part of a larger process, one that is preparing you for opportunities, growth, and success that align with your ultimate purpose. Patience, perspective, and trust transform what appears negative into an essential part of your journey, shaping you to handle blessings wisely and navigate life with greater resilience and understanding.